Editor Adam is here to explain the CKAD question bank. Next up is our second question. This second question is about managing scheduled tasks. For these tasks, this question mainly requires you to create a new scheduled task manually. For this task, first of all, there are quite a few requirements, but actually, it's just a single file. Our main job is to create a file, and within this file, what requirements do we need to meet at the same time? Well, that includes things like the timing, the specific command, as well as some specific operations. So here first, let's take a look at the basic requirements of the question. There really are quite a few requirements. First of all, for this scheduled task, what does it include? The first thing is, first of all, what do we need? Oh, we need to go ahead and build a container. Configure our cron job. Then, as for the timing, it should run once every 5 minutes. Next, keep 2 completed jobs and 4 failed jobs, which is essentially keeping a history record. And the pod should never restart. Finally, after 8 seconds, it should be terminated, because for a scheduled task that runs every few minutes, it can't just keep running indefinitely. So every time it runs, it must be terminated after 8 seconds. So that's the basic content of this question. Although there are quite a few requirements, there are indeed a lot of things to pay attention to. And finally, everyone should pay attention to testing this pod. When testing our cron job, first of all, as long as it runs normally, meaning your syntax and the specific content are correct, then that's fine. Whether this job completes successfully or fails is not important. That's something mentioned in the question, not just my opinion. Whether it succeeds or not doesn't matter. As mentioned in the question itself, the success or failure of this task is not important. As long as your syntax is correct and each requirement is met, that's enough. This is the main task of our second question. So basically, what is the main point? It's about creating our cron job. And then executing a certain piece of content, executing a certain task. Of course, here you can still go to the official website and copy one of our template configuration files. For each question, actually, there are many corresponding templates in the official documentation with relevant content and templates for reference. However, it's definitely not the same as the answer. So everyone needs to pay attention to this. Don't just say, hey, I copied a section from the official website, pasted it in, and it worked, right? In many cases, the syntax might indeed be fine, but what's missing? We're missing a lot of parameters. So, what this means is, it's fine to copy the template from the official documentation at first, but after you've copied it, you must make sure to modify it according to the requirements of the question, changing it to the correct parameters. Alright, so first, let's go ahead and create it here. Let's go ahead and create it directly. First, let's remotely connect to our corresponding host. Alright, after we've remotely connected to the corresponding host, we can start editing our YML file directly. As for the name, you can choose whatever you like. If the question doesn't specify a required name, just name it as you wish. There's really nothing special you need to pay attention to here. After you come in, at first, by default, if you haven't copied anything, it will definitely be empty. If it's empty, you can just write the content yourself. Actually, this isn't very complicated. It's really not that complex, so you can just write it directly if you really can't remember it. You can also do what? You can also copy from the official documentation, copy the template from the official docs. But remember, the template is just a template. Don't think that once you've copied it, you're all set. You definitely need to modify it yourself. Just change it to the corresponding content you need. When we're writing here for the API version type, just write it as you normally would. As for the metadata section, it's really just about the name. There's not much else to it, just the name. Just write the name according to the requirements of the question. The main content is in the fourth part, where we write the specific details of our scheduled task. So first, the most important thing about a scheduled task is what? It's how often you want it to run. Right? That's our most basic requirement. So in fact, the most fundamental part of our scheduled task is this. It's the timing. It's all about the timing. So the first thing we need to do is fill in the time. Everyone, pay attention to the symbols here. Be careful with the symbols. Make sure you don't leave out any symbols. That's all you need to remember. For scheduled tasks here, since what we mentioned is once every 5 minutes. As for the rest of the time fields, as we all know, right? Scheduled tasks are divided into 5 parts: minute, hour, day, month, and week. But according to the requirements, what about the time? It's only about the minutes, right? Once every 5 minutes. So here, you can just use */5 for the first field, and for the other 4, you can just use asterisks. Next, let's talk about the issue of retaining our historical records. The question requires that for normal successful history records, we keep 2, and for failed history records, we keep 4. Why do we keep more failed records? Mainly because after a failure, keeping more records makes it easier to analyze the reasons for the failure later on. So generally speaking, we keep more failed records. The number retained will be higher. That's the situation. So here, the first thing we do is write down the successful history records first. Limit the number of related successful history records to 2, and as for failed history records, that is, failed. We limit the number of failed history records to a certain limit. Similarly, there will be more failed records kept. Then, after we've finished writing these 2 lines, the next step is your specific task. As for the task, it's actually provided in the question. Basically just 2 lines, or rather 2 sets of commands. Just 2 sets of commands. Here, we just need to directly put that set of commands into our scheduled task. So how do we write the first scheduled task? When we write a job template, usually when we write a hold or something similar, right? Basically, we often write a template for this kind of thing. But this time, it's not an ordinary pod, right? We're dealing with a scheduled task pod, so here we use job and then template. It's like we've just added a task. Before adding the task, it was just a regular pod template, but this time it's essentially a scheduled task template, and within it, we write the specific detailed information. First of all, what do we need here? We need to specify the time. We need to write down the time. As for the time, since this is a one-time scheduled task, it can't run indefinitely, so what do we need to add here? We need to specify the runtime. So here, if you look at this part normally, what is it actually? It's the active time, the period during which it's active. That's the normal runtime. After 8 seconds, it becomes dead, right? So here let's write out this template. So what exactly does the family actually do in their daily lives? Now let's start defining our container, okay? As for this container, first of all, containers. Of course, there's only one container here, but regardless of how many containers there are, we use a list here. Then after that, you write the name of the container and the name of the image. For these, just follow the requirements in the question. There's nothing special about this, nothing out of the ordinary. Next, this includes some basic information about the container, just the basic container information. The content is indeed quite long, and it's easy to make mistakes. Don't worry about this, everyone. It's also fine if you make a mistake here, right? Normally, if you make a mistake, just correct it. Next, you just need to write down however many commands are given in the question. Of course, if you're worried about making mistakes, you can just copy and paste them. You can copy and paste because you can simply copy the commands directly from the question and paste them into our command line. Yes, you can copy this part. It's allowed to copy. Next, this is one segment. Right now, we have a complete command, but there are 2 more parts. Here, everyone should pay attention. When you're writing this command, make sure to leave. Of course, if you're copying, this isn't an issue, but if you're writing it yourself, remember to leave spaces. After each part, leave a space. And finally, after we've finished writing out this entire command, what can we do? We can just go ahead and save it and then verify it. You can save and verify. Of course, after this, there's another line, which is about whether a restart is required, right? There's a requirement about whether a restart is needed at headquarters. Everyone pay attention to this never restart setting. This is called indentation, right? Where does it go? It goes together with the container because this restart policy here, what does it belong to? It belongs to the pod's restart policy, not the container's restart policy. So it's at the same level as the container. Both are part of the pod. Pay attention to this section, and then here we save. After it's done, let's verify it, let's check it. Of course, it's quite long, so it's normal to make mistakes. If you make a mistake, just troubleshoot it. It's fine, that's how it is. But there is a small issue, which is what? If your parameters are wrong. This really is a problem, right? If the parameters are wrong, it's definitely an issue. So when you're writing, you must be careful. For example, in my current situation, after we execute it, we can be absolutely sure that there are no syntax errors. But as for whether the parameters are correct or not, we don't know. Yeah, we really don't know, right? So it's best if, after you've confirmed there are no syntax issues, you check it again. What should you mainly check? Mainly, you should check these things, right? The specific parameters, like the name, time, quantity, right? Also the time, name, image, and strategy, right? Once you're sure there are no problems with these commands at the end, then you can just go ahead and execute it, just run it again, and it should be fine. So where could you actually make a mistake here? For example, if you enter the wrong number, technically there's no issue. The command will still execute normally, and even the scheduled task will run as expected. These are minor mistakes that don't really matter, but you must meet the requirements of the question. So in this case, you really have to double check everything yourself. Make sure you check it thoroughly. Now let's manually execute it. So how do we do that? We use our command line and add it in. You can use either create or appline. Both are fine. Let's execute this one-time survey task. Okay, it's already been executed once. After running it once, let's check this information. Let's take a look at the information for our crawl job. You can see the name, right? And the time is there too. You can also see some information, right? You can see the information, but how should I put it? This thing, you can't see the specific parameters. Not being able to see the specific parameters is also a problem. It's an issue. So this is our specific situation. Of course, we can also trigger it manually. How do you trigger it? You can just use create directly. Add this after job. Dash PPI dash test. You can just write any name here and then dash dash from. Where does it come from? It comes from our groundhog, from our cron job. In this case, it's from the cron job. Dash. My name is this name. This is manual. This means you can execute it manually, trigger it manually, right? After triggering, we can use get to check the status of our jobs to see how the jobs are doing. Here, we can see the normal content. And here, the one we triggered manually is actually a successful case, a successful situation. Of course, whether it's this situation or not doesn't really matter. If you look above, there's actually a failed one and another one that's on hold. As long as you, as long as you follow the requirements written in the prompt, complete all the content correctly, and the parameters are all correct, then whether it's a success or failure doesn't matter. The success or failure really isn't important. All right, so this is our final result, the final effect. Once you're done, you can just exit normally. As long as your syntax is correct and you've checked the parameters, there won't be any problem with this question. You're done. All right, this is something everyone needs to pay attention to. So this is our second question. There are indeed quite a lot of requirements and parameters, so make sure not to make any mistakes. If you get even one wrong, well, it will have a pretty big impact. It really will. Wow, so that's our second question for today. In the future, we will also continue to explain other questions for everyone. If you're interested, feel free to discuss in the comments section below. And if you have any questions, you can also message me directly. If you need the question bank for the later parts, you can also, find it either in the comments section or by sending me a private message. You can apply for the latest version of the question bank. All right, that's all for today. Goodbye, everyone.